I titled today's conversation mind map, How to Abide as I Am Completely Fulfilled. How to abide as I am completely fulfilled. So now this is an interesting thing to say. How to abide as I am completely fulfilled. Because you are already that. I am completely fulfilled that I referred to. The fact that you are aware of all these things, which includes your body, the thoughts, the emotions, the world, etc., means that you are already that. Now, this might not make any sense because the individual might think that they are the beliefs of lack or limitation, which seem to suggest that they are not fulfilled, which, if identified with, generates the illusions of feeling like you're separate emotionally, generates thoughts that suggest that you are separate with, you could name it, person, environment, experience, etc. So the key is, as James Allen had said in his wonderful book, The Heavenly Life, he said, they who resolve that they will not rest satisfied with appearances, shadows, and illusions, by finding the divine center within their own heart, they will be calm, strong, and wise, and will ceaselessly radiate the heavenly life in which they live, which is himself, yourself. That is the way it is. What else can I say? I mean, he's just speaking truth right there. Now, I didn't realize this until a later point. I read Think and Grow Rich in 2004, and I was in $50,000 debt. Interesting story. Someone had actually slashed my tires at work. I don't know who it was. Maybe someone I cut off on the road by accident or whoever from my past. But someone actually slashed my tires at work, and there was 2 tires that needed to be replaced. Now, when I went to go check to see if I have money on my credit card, because I was spending more than I was making, I didn't have a harmonious relationship with money. I realized that I didn't have enough on my credit card to buy 2 new tires or 2 used tires even. And I said to myself, I can't live this way. And so I came across somebody who spoke on a video about Think and Grow Rich. And he said that this was the book that transformed his life. So I got a copy of the book and I started reading it, and I noticed that he was talking about things that I never heard of before. He was talking about the subconscious mind. He was talking about auto-suggestion. He was talking about the sixth sense. And although I was raised Catholic, I knew exactly what it is that he's pointing to. He's just using different words to describe the same thing. And so, Mark 11:24, whatsoever things ye desire, pray as though ye have received it, and it will be yours, is something that I came across before. Or, your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you openly. That's Matthew 6:4. So I knew about these things. He just articulated it in a very precise way. He helped me realize that there were these beliefs that I was identified with that was generating this kind of experience, this inharmonious relationship with money. These beliefs were suggesting that I was not fulfilled, Or let's say it this way, I would look to the appearances, not see the money to pay for the tires and say, I am not fulfilled. Now, later on the journey, I realized that I am fulfilled with or without the money. That took a while to come to that realization, which is perfectly fine. As a matter of fact, I'd say probably over the last year or so, we've been talking about it more so on this channel. That is because through practical experience, what was once an interesting idea, but although I had an intuition that it is that way, by living it, what I realized that it is that way. I noticed that I thought that I needed a particular person or a particular kind of experience to be fulfilled. And then I would notice that a thought would appear in mind that would suggest, well, who suggests you need to be with this person or be in that particular environment to be fulfilled? And I said, it's an interesting thought. And it makes sense because I realized that fulfillment is within. And we relate to the different experiences in life, people, environment, etc. And we may say we are fulfilled because of this person or because of this environment, etc. And no shame and condemnation. It is helpful to realize that the only place we experience fulfillment is within. You experience it within. You can describe it by saying, I have these thoughts that suggest fulfillment, or the emotions are experienced in a way that suggests fulfillment. A person may think it's because of these things. In other words, if body appears this way, then fulfilled, and if body were appearing another way, then not fulfilled. But who determines that? Who suggests that? Even if I were to suggest and say, the body appearing whatever kind of way, sitting down symbolizes fulfillment, and the body walking symbolizes lack of fulfillment, only you, if I say those two statements to you, you have the ability to really think for yourself and say, what's Joseph talking about? I feel fulfilled while I walk. I feel fulfilled when I sit down. Why is he saying that? You can only feel fulfilled when you're sitting down. And when you're walking, you can't feel fulfillment. It's clearly illusory what he's suggesting. So this was helpful because in Think and Grow Rich, he spoke about that as well. We suggest perhaps all day long what these appearances seem to suggest. That's a way of saying it. And as you suggest these things, it creates beliefs which get stored in the subconscious mind, which the individual identifies with. And they can be revealed in, as we've been discussing, when, let's say, they're out and about. They see someone they want to start a conversation with. And so there's a genuine desire to start a conversation with the individual. Now, there may be some thoughts that appear in mind that suggest that if the individual responds this way or that way, then that means rejection, and that means you're not fulfilled. So the individual may then experience what is called fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. Usually in these kind of scenarios, it's flight response, as in they run away. They don't go and start the conversation, which is what they genuinely desire to do. We can see clearly that's based on conditioning. It's conditioning that suggests that the appearances need to be in a particular way in order to be fulfilled, which is illusory. As he said, he who resolves that he will not rest satisfied with appearances, shadows, and illusions shall, by the piercing light of that resolve, disperse every fleeting fantasy and will enter into the substance and reality of life. Now that substance and reality of life is that still I am presence, being completely fulfilled, and you are that. You don't need to do anything in order to be that. You are already that. So all I did over the years is applied what was mentioned in Think and Grow Rich and dissolved the conditioning that was stored in the subconscious mind. And we could even say that mind became so nimble that at times we could describe it as no mind. No mind. Or in the Zen martial arts, it's known as Mushin no Shin, mind without mind. Now that might sound confusing. Well, essentially, you live fully now. You see someone you would like to start a conversation with, you walk over and start a conversation with them. The same is true, for example, in business when it comes to prospecting. The same is true in business when it comes to starting a conversation with someone in a mastermind. Speaking of which, I started a school community recently. I announced it on my new channel. I have another channel where I speak about entrepreneurship. I'll link to both that channel and the school group in the description if you're interested in connecting with other like-minded individuals who operate from the heart of awareness, which is what we're talking about here. So if you're interested in that, I'll link in the description to it. So now, abiding as you are in that pure awareness, what happens is these conditions fall away. They dissolve. So as mentioned, you see someone you'd like to start a conversation with, you start a conversation with them. You want to move to another country, you move to another country. You want to start a business, you go start a business. And even along the way of building the business, what happens is the same, you can call it rule applies. You can abide as you are completely fulfilled, knowing that any thoughts that suggest otherwise, and any thoughts that the individual subconsciously associates to emotions that seem to suggest that emotions suggest otherwise, can no longer be identified with when you know that you are that still I am presence, the supreme, absolute peace, bliss, fulfillment, joy, happiness. You know, I like the word Ananda, Satchit Ananda. Ananda may be translated into peace, joy, happiness, bliss, ecstatic. It's not to say you'll always feel ecstatic. Sometimes you feel peaceful, completely fine. Sometimes you feel blissful. You may describe it that way, completely fine. Sometimes you feel happiness. You can describe it that way, completely fine. Sometimes it's ecstatic, completely fine. That is your real nature. Joy, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, love. That is who you are. It's another way of saying you are completely fulfilled. You do not need this or that externally to be fulfilled. Now, here's the interesting thing. You experience your fulfillment or your bliss or your happiness or peace or joy with the individual, not based on condition. So let's say you walk over and you start a conversation with the individual. If they say, here's my phone number, great. If they don't say that, great. You don't need anything to be fulfilled. Now, it's interesting, and I've taught this to individuals that go to networking events, business events, to meet potential clients, prospects, mastermind partners, make new friends, etc. They're not afraid to start a conversation, and also, if anyone starts a conversation with them, there is no fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. It's just not there because they're completely fulfilled. And so what did I teach them? Well, what James Allen had mentioned here, he says, having taken themselves to the divine refuge within and remaining there, the individual is free from sin. Now we know sin is missing the mark. Missing the mark simply means the identification to the illusion that you are not fulfilled. Or you could say sinning is suggesting that you lack fulfillment. That's it. I am completely fulfilled. That's what I meant by how to abide as I am completely fulfilled. How do you abide as I am completely fulfilled? You dissolve all the conditioning that suggests otherwise. those conditions dissolve and you experience what I mentioned earlier can be referred to as no mind, or being in flow, where everything happens naturally, effortlessly, and spontaneously. I taught this to entrepreneurs in business because this is exactly what I did. But as mentioned, this can be applied for any area of your life. Essentially, what I'm getting at here is just as you can be completely fulfilled sitting down in the privacy of your own home with no distraction in a meditation, like for example, a Vipassana meditation. And if you're interested in Vipassana meditation, I've been doing it since 2008. I'll link in the description to it. Meditation dissolves the conditioning. Just as you could be completely fulfilled in a meditation, you can also be completely fulfilled while performing your day-to-day tasks, projects, and initiatives in your business. Why does it need to be that only you can experience fulfillment or happiness or peace or joy or bliss in a meditation, a formal meditation practice like Vipassana, and then you don't experience your real nature while you're performing your tasks, your projects, your initiatives? That's illusory. I can speak from experience on this, and by that it is meant illusory, as in it's the conditions in mind that can be dissolved along the way in relation to your vision. So what I mean by that is, see, you have been given the two gifts as stated in the Hermetica. They are mind and speech. The gifts are also stated to be equal to immortality. Equal to immortality. Now, how do you use these two gifts wisely? Well, you have a wonderful mind, conscious mind and a subconscious mind. And there's also the superconscious mind, or the infinite mind, which you are not separate from, that doeth the work, that does everything. So you can consciously imagine yourself living any kind of life that you desire to live. That is what I did with Think and Grow Rich. I imagined myself having $25,000 in my bank account. I was in debt. You can imagine yourself having in your possession X amount of money, ideal harmonious relationship, ideal harmonious business, or whatsoever things you desire. Mark 11:24. And you can hold in your mind an image of you already experiencing that which you desire. And what happens is that goes into the subconscious mind, and some way, somehow, it happens. So not only are you completely fulfilled, if you desire to experience that complete fulfillment in form, you receive a desire from the heart of awareness. You desire to have $25,000 in your bank account, $100,000 in your bank account, whatever it may be. That desire emerges from the heart of awareness so that you can experience fulfillment. What we're talking about here is not saying, I am fulfilled. I am that pure awareness. I am fulfilled. You are fulfilled, certainly. You know that you are completely fulfilled. You feel that you are completely fulfilled. We can describe it as ananda, peace, happiness, joy, bliss, for no reason. Not because of this or that money. Not because you have $25,000 in the bank account or not. As mentioned, in the early stages, I didn't know this. What we're talking about right now is based on experience that I discovered along the way, which is completely fine. You learn along the way. Inevitably, you come to the realization that you are completely fulfilled. That doesn't mean that you are completely fulfilled. You can't have what you desire. You have what you desire. Desire points to fulfillment. If you have a desire, that means you have what you desire. There's no restriction in mind. We can say no mind. Desire means having. So you can imagine yourself having what you desire. This is what I noticed. In the earlier stages, there was a lot of resistance when I would set these definite chief aims up. like you would say in Think and Grow Rich. There was tons of resistance. I'm like, oh, there's no way this is going to happen. How is this going to happen? All these worries. But what I found was right away, ask and ye shall receive. I would get an insight or a step or something would change in my world. And I would just take that step, whatever that step may be. Start the conversation with the person, start the business or whatever it may be. Go to a networking event or buy a particular book, whatever. I wouldn't hesitate it because I know that hesitation or fear or doubt or indecision was generated by conditioning in the subconscious mind, which does not represent me. Clearly it doesn't. It's generating resistance. Thoughts are appearing in mind suggesting that I am not that fulfillment, I lack love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, etc. And I can dissolve it by not identifying with it. And so the way I would dissolve it was articulated very well in the book Flow by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. So this is how you practically abide as I am, completely fulfilled in day-to-day life, not just in the meditation. Everyone on this channel here I speak to shares with me that while they're in their meditation, they can experience fulfillment. And also, what we're noticing more of, and this is what I'm encouraging in the school group, is being completely fulfilled in all areas of your life. Not just in meditation, while with your family, while with your friends, while with your business, while with this, while with that. To live life fully. Okay, you know you're completely fulfilled? Well, if you would like to, it's up to you. I'm not going to tell you what to do. It's totally up to you. I desire to live life completely fulfilled. That means I desire to do what I genuinely desire to do and have what I desire. And I'm not interested in the opinions, as Steve Jobs had mentioned in his commencement speech, that appear in mind. Thoughts that suggest otherwise. Oh, you can't have it. You shouldn't do it. Those thoughts appear to disappear when you apply what I'm talking about right here, which is the flow process as articulated in the wonderful book Flow by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. So, clear goal, abstract, and granular level. You have a vision. You are already that which you desire to be. You saw yourself in imagination, experiencing that which you desire to be. And that means you are that already now. I am that now, in imagination. But that is how we consciously apply the power. You consciously apply the power by knowing that you are completely fulfilled in that regard. Desire points to fulfillment. You desire to have $25,000, $100,000 in your bank account. It means you have what you desire. You can imagine yourself having what you desire, driving that car, being in that relationship now. That leaves an impression upon the subconscious mind, as I had learned from Think and Grow Rich, and then later on I came across the book, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. And this is all I did. This is not a complicated thing to do. Complexity arises from ignorance, as James Allen had also said in the book Heavenly Life, and that ignorance is identification to conditioning in mind. And it's not a shame and condemnation thing. It's just unknowingly the individual forms this condition in mind. I mean, who actively, consciously desires to form conditioning in mind that if identified with, they see someone they want to go start a conversation with, they have a hard time starting a conversation with them. If they genuinely desire to build a business, they have a hard time performing the initiatives, hard time discovering that there are people out there that they can automate to, delegate to, optimize. That's why I say no shame, no condemnation. Put off that former conversation, as stated in the Bible. It belongs to the old man, and you are not the old man. So dissolve the conditioning along the way. This is how we practically abide as I am, completely fulfilled. You can't half-step this. There's no spiritual bypassing, no pretending, no faking. You know, like we were growing up, we used to say, like if you're going to pretend, like the world's just going to check you. My friends were saying is essentially that the conditioning is playing out as theater. So don't identify with that conditioning. Be real. How do you be real practically? Well, know that you're completely fulfilled. You cannot then be half-stepping because you're afraid, or looking around to see what other people are doing or what they think, which is illusory because only you can think in that moment what they're thinking. Once you realize that, that is what's going on in the mind, is this kind of programming is conjuring up particular imaginal activity of what these individuals are thinking prior to you starting a conversation with them. How do you know that's exactly what they're thinking? We can only assume that that's what they're thinking. We can only imagine that that's what they're thinking. I recommend not identifying with that condition. I recommend just walking over and starting the conversation, dissolve that programming. So clear goals at an abstract and granular level. So granular level, tasks, projects, initiatives. Immediate reporting and feedback. So let's say you're having a conversation with the person. You're aware of any kind of thoughts in mind. You're aware of your emotions, and you're aware of your body, any kind of tension in your body. You know that if you're about to be identified, or if you become identified with any kind of conditioning, because we see that there's a reaction to a fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. Fight, you want to fight the person, or fight the circumstance, which is illusory. What are you going to do? Kick the laptop because the laptop doesn't give you the kind of numbers that you're looking for? That doesn't make any sense. But I don't shame and condemn, but that's not something someone would consciously do, but that's something that the programming manifests as. So then freeze is essentially like not being still. That's not what be still in the Bible refers to. This is different. It's just frozen because the individual's really afraid or something like that. And then there's fawn, people pleasing. So we want to dissolve that conditioning. As I always say, you just desire to know who you are, that pure awareness, completely fulfilled, and you desire to be as you are. And be as you are means whatever these desires that emerge from the heart of awareness are, you are already that. And it manifests accordingly in form, whatever it may be. Wonderful relationship, business, car, this, that. Now, as you're engaging in the conversation, there may be some challenge. So if there's conditioning that suggests that challenge is bad, then there may be a fight, flight, freeze, fawn response. So we dissolve that conditioning. How do you dissolve that conditioning? By letting the thoughts be, not identifying with them, and letting the emotions be without suppressing or repressing them, and continuing the conversation. And if you don't know what to say, fine. If you know what to say, fine. If they say, hey, let's meet up later on, fine. If they say, let's not meet up later on, fine. It doesn't change the fact when you know that you are completely fulfilled. It doesn't change the fact. Nothing a person can say to you can change the fact that you exist as fulfillment. So as you don't identify with the conditioning that generates the resistance, it dissolves. And that's what he meant by harmony between challenge and skill. So that's where skill is cultivated. So we don't run away from challenge. It's a sweet spot. I call it the G spot, the God spot. You get to experience God real time. You get to experience complete fulfillment in the moment, in between that sweet spot of where challenge meets skill. And then the magic happens. Actions and awareness become one. Distractions are dissolved. Fear, doubt, indecision, no longer there. Time distortion. The activity in the person becomes autotelic. And you are free in that regard. You are now free. I noticed this. It was really hard for me back in the earlier stages to put out videos and talk about what I genuinely want to talk about. I would look around and I'd say, oh, what are people going to say if I say these things? And then I realized, because I've been applying this for years, that's just thoughts appearing to disappear in mind. I don't need to identify with it. So I take the step and make the videos. And I did this for prospecting. I did this for any area of business: innovation, sales, marketing, operations, finance, leadership, optimization, automation, delegation, elimination. I did this with content creation, etc. See, because you already know the way, you know the step to take. You take the step, the next step emerges, the next step emerges, the next step emerges. And here's the wonderful thing. Actions and awareness become one, as he said. They're actually one. That's why I was saying earlier, if I say, how to abide as I am completely fulfilled, that can sound illusory, as you are already that. We just dissolve the conditioning along the way, which is stored in the subconscious mind, to know that you're already that. You are, you can say it this way, firmly established in your desired reality, or firmly established in absolute reality, absolute perfection that you are. And life feels more effortless, fun, joyous, flow-based. You have a desire, you have what you desire, like a child. Like a child, you live your life fully. And things just spontaneously happen for you. You start to notice even that things that you once desired just spontaneously start happening. You may not even have a desire, or so it seems, I don't know. Yet things happen spontaneously and you're like, oh, that's love, that's happiness, that's peace, that's bliss, that's fulfilling. Or that's a fulfilling experience, or that's a fulfilling conversation, or that's a fulfilling relationship, or that's a fulfilling this, the fulfilling that. Lately I've been saying it this way, and we're probably going to have more conversations about this. You are completely fulfilled. You are already that which you desire to be. There's no need to think otherwise. Those kinds of thoughts just appear to disappear, and so do the corresponding appearances, the theaters that correspond to those thoughts. If those thoughts no longer are identified with, they appear to disappear. They appear to disappear. You know, I've seen environments radically transform in my life over the years since I've been applying this, since 2004. And what I've also noticed is I just spontaneously end up in environments where there's fulfilling experiences having. There's fulfilling experiences to be had. And if there's a challenge that arises, because at times you set a definite chief aim and it's a challenging goal, I'm not going to back away from this challenge. Why? I have seen, you have seen again and again and again, you've transcended this. And there's an enormous amount of bliss, as mentioned, with the sweet spot where challenge meets skill. Oh, you get to experience that. Just as you experience it in the meditation, you experience being completely fulfilled, that joy, that happiness, that peace, that bliss. You also get to experience it in day-to-day life. So I trust you found this video to be helpful. Let's conclude this with an auto-suggestion to further encourage. You could say, I know that I am that fulfillment beyond reason. I know that I am completely fulfilled with or without appearances. Thus, I experience with appearances complete fulfillment, doing what I love to do without resistance in flow. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk with you soon. Take care.